Hello, my name is Justin Humphries with the Humphries Law Firm, and this is a project I'm starting called Objection to the Form. It's going to be a podcast that I hope to get up and going on a fairly regular basis. This is kind of our initial dry run, and so I hope you enjoy it. But right now I'm going to discuss some of the legal issues that have been on some of the folks I'm talking to's minds that have come up as a result of the coronavirus.
So, Justin, can you tell us what is happening with people that are unable to pay their rent right now?
Well, the rent's still due. I don't know if you've seen there's a group of tenants that's attempting to unionize. It's a thing called can't pay, won't pay that I've come across. And so there's positives and negatives about that. I mean, as far as if you're in a position to where you can't pay right now, there's really no enforcement mechanism for landlords. And the reason for that is that the Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court has closed courthouses for hearings except for essential matters until the 1st of June. So while there's no order that doesn't require you to pay rent, or there's no rent abatement officially from the government or from anything like that, there's really no enforcement mechanism for a landlord that would try to evict you. The problem becomes once court resumes, you could be in a position where you owe 2 or 3 months of rent, and it'll be a fairly quick process from that point forward. I'm sure the courts will have difficulty having all the eviction hearings all at one time, so it may take some time once the hearings get going. But it's not an excuse not to pay if you have the ability.
What about mortgages? How is this affecting people who aren't able to pay their mortgages?
Many of the federally backed mortgages have forbearance programs, and lenders are being encouraged to work something out. So my advice would be to contact your lender if you're having difficulty, or if you're, if you lost your job or you're furloughed as a result of what's going on. But the foreclosures are similar to evictions in that the sales of properties have been stopped and there's no foreclosure hearings going on. But kind of the same principles apply, that if you don't make the payments, you're going to be in a bad position once all this is over.
Because you think that they're all going to come due at the same time?
Well, if you don't have anything worked out with your lender, of course, it's just going to build on top of itself. So if you haven't made the last 3 months of payments, you'll be in a position to where your lender, once the court can schedule a hearing for a foreclosure hearing, or once they can get back to selling properties, it puts you in a bad spot.
You don't think there's going to be any sort of national bailout plan or anything like that?
I've got no clue as far as something like that goes, but I think it'd be difficult to issue a blanket order preventing lenders and servicers from initiating foreclosures. But I do think that there probably will be, as long as you're being reasonable with a lot of these folks, I think that they will make arrangements with you. And a lot of these mortgages, the majority of them are of residential mortgages anyway, are owned by federally backed entities. So there will be some mechanisms to where they can control it, but I've got no clue as far as what exactly would happen.
So I know that your firm specializes, one of your specialties is real estate closings. Have you seen anything changing in regards to that? Are things slowing down? Are you doing anything differently?
Well, one of the things that we're seeing is everybody wants things done immediately because there's this huge sense of uncertainty right now. The Register of Deeds office is the office that records deeds, and they're kind of the crucial office as far as making it happen, because the real estate transaction's not complete until the deed is recorded. And so there's some apprehension that what if the Register of Deeds office closes? So when this first was breaking and every day was a new day and there were new offices closing or new hours changing, we had everybody wanted their closings and their transactions moved up as fast as possible. And so that was certainly going on in late March and early April, and things seem to have calmed down. The Register of Deeds is still recording deeds, and they're doing it almost to the same level as before. They prefer people don't come in, but they will see you at the office if you need to record something. Our office does e-recording, so we don't drive down there. It's kind of a paperless transaction. We just upload the deed and submit it that way. So it hasn't changed the way we operate. The only thing that has changed is the Register of Deeds no longer records after 4:30 in New Hanover because they're working with a reduced staff, and some of the other local counties are doing the same thing. But everything's still moving along. So I would say, there's more urgency, and I think some of the old things, some of the older transactions, you see people wanting them now, and but everything that we could do 2 months ago, we can still do today.
So I remember when I bought my house, and I did the closing, and there was a lot of signing in front of a notary or an attorney, and how are y'all sort of dealing with that in-person interaction in light of what's going on?
Well, we're doing a couple things. We're doing a lot by mail away. So that would be we prepare we get the package from a lender, and then we mail it out to you, typically by FedEx, so it can be tracked. And then our clients have the capability of taking it to a notary themselves. A lot of banks, a lot of UPS mailing stations, places like that have notaries on staff, so you can get your closing package notarized by someone else, and then you return it to the mail. We're doing deliveries in some situations where we've gone over to people's houses, verify that it's them, have them execute the package, and then we have them verify that they were the ones that signed it. Then we pick it back up and do it that way. We're also doing kind of like what the restaurants are doing, sort of a curbside process where people are coming in and signing in their cars downstairs. So we've had that going on. So we're trying to do as much as we can to make sure people's transactions are still going through. A lot of people really don't want to see us, is what we're seeing a lot too. A lot of people want to keep as much distance as possible, and we're trying to respect that. And then also some of the folks that don't have printers or don't have FedEx boxes near them or things like that, we're certainly happy to accommodate them by having them come to the office.
Okay, so this next question I'm asking for a friend. If in the event I were to get arrested for, say, a DUI or a failure to pay child support or any number of small infraction, what would happen to me?
Well, you'd go to jail, and I guess that's pretty obvious, and it's certainly no reprieve to you gotta keep abiding by the laws. But one of the interesting things, so the Supreme Court's Chief Justice entered the order kind of staying all court hearings. One of the exceptions to that is for first appearances. And so, if you commit a minor infraction, or I shouldn't say minor, but if you committed any one of those crimes, you'd likely have a bail hearing so you could get out, so you're not stuck in jail forever or until the quarantine's over. So
that's positive.
It certainly is.
And what if I were to need to file a new case? What if something were to come up, or I wanted to get divorced now, or if I wanted to file some sort of malpractice or any sort of civil litigation? Yeah,
we're seeing a spike in divorces, and I guess with the quarantine situation, maybe people are tired of hanging out with their spouses or significant others. But yeah, you can still file whatever you want. The courthouses are still open; they're still accepting new filings. They prefer that you mail it, and they're set up to file. You can mail your pleadings or your divorce complaint or your lawsuit, whatever it is you want to do. But just you just need to be aware that you're not going to be able to get into court to hear it until at least early June. But you can still file any case that you could have filed before all this started.
And so divorce attorneys are essential business.
Oh, all attorneys are. So it's not limited to divorce or real estate or civil, criminal. All attorneys' offices are considered essential.
Okay, what about jury duty? What's going on with that these days?
Well, there's no trials to hear. So if you're selected for jury duty, you're out of it for now until they might bring you back. But there are no jury trials happening until at least the first week of June.
So a lot of my friends are really interested in some of the maritime law that I know your office specializes in, and I think that's because I live in Middle Sound and there's a lot of boaters there, and we've seen a lot change over the weekend with them closing down private marinas, and there's some sort of gray area with HOA marinas. Could you explain to us who exactly I guess is in control of their waterways and how that works?
Well, so I guess as far as who's in control of the waterways, there is the Wildlife Department controls and has jurisdiction that's concurrent with the Coast Guard over accidents and fishing and things. Well, wildlife deals with fishing. The Coast Guard doesn't deal with that, but they both have concurrent jurisdiction over the waterways in this area. And what you'll see is a lot of the state agencies are the ones that have issued the ban on the boat docks and the marinas, and I think a lot of that came from what we saw in Masonboro, and that seemed to have caused a little bit of uproar about that. But essentially, I guess to answer the question is there's several agencies that are in control, but it's the state, which would be wildlife and would be some of the entities that would be enforcing the order, because the order came at the county level and the state level.
Is it possible that they could enforce that no one could get in their private boat and use the waterways? Is that possible?
It would almost have to be in some kind of a martial law type issue, because if you have water access as part, if you own property with water access and water rights, you can't have that taken away from you as far as your ability to access the water, because the public as a whole owns the water. It's called the public trust doctrine. But so the way they keep people out is through eliminating the access points, such as a public marina or some of the items that were subject to last weekend's order. But if you have your own pier or your own dock at your residence, then you're allowed to access that, as long as you're not inviting others to congregate or doing something that would be in violation of the government's orders.
And so I guess when they close, something like Masonboro Island, or then there's nowhere for you to really go to dock up on your boat. I mean, there's nowhere to pull up on land. Like, what about those barrier islands near, like Lee's Cut or Mason's Inlet, or
my advice would be not to dock up somewhere like that, especially not meeting with other people. And I know that's kind of may defeat the purpose of going out in many instances. These a lot of the areas you're discussing aren't necessarily. Some of them can be just sandbars, where they're not necessarily a recognized piece of property that belongs to anyone. So that would typically, things that are sandbars and things of that nature would typically be considered sort of like the water in general. But what they would have, and by they I'm talking about the wildlife and Coast Guard, could potentially have the authority to break up meetings, or if you're out there kind of hanging out on the beach, they could ask you to leave. But I would say it kind of depends on where are you docking. Is it considered proper? Like Masonboro is a state property, Masonboro Island. So that's why they have the authority to close that. But if it's a sandbar or something that doesn't really belong to anyone, that's kind of considered the same as the water. So your right to be on that area would be the same as your right to be on the water. But I think where you could run into trouble is if people are gathering in a place where that's subject to the jurisdiction of the Coast Guard or the Department of Wildlife. You could end up getting yourself, a fine or getting violations of the governor's orders, a Class 2 misdemeanor. So,
what is that punishable by?
Well, it depends on your record. If your record's clean, then you'd get community service or a suspended sentence. If you've got some things on your record, you could potentially have supervised probation, or if your record's real bad, it could be an active sentence of up to 30 days. So,
yikes.
It's not something you'd want. But I'm sure that a lot of the things that we're seeing in the order, it's really the spirit behind it that's important, because and I think that's what they're doing, is trying to raise awareness. Because when you look at it, especially with respect to the businesses, there's several loopholes, or I don't know loopholes, I guess is one word for it, but there's lots of ways out of, or when you give it a deep dive, there's a lot of ways around the order. And I think, but the spirit of it is, you're not trying to get around anything. It's just about staying safe, and I think that's what they want people to know. And kind of what I mean by that is, if you look at who's subject to the order, essential businesses can be any business where you can adhere to social distancing standards. And so, it doesn't get too much more vague than that. Now, that's kind of speaks to business as a whole. Not necessarily, there are certain businesses that were singled out in the order, such as restaurants that are not allowed to have people in for dine-in, or spas, or gyms, or hotels, things like that. A spa, gym, or hotel can't say, well, we believe we can remain open and respect social distancing standards. But if you're if you sell lawn equipment, or if I'm trying to think of what, because they're pretty much every type of business was addressed in one way or the other, and then but I'm sure there's plenty of types of businesses to think of out there. But the point of it is to stay at home if you can. And that's kind of like with what we're doing with the law firm is we've reduced staff greatly, and a lot of what we can do here can be done remotely. But the items you were talking about earlier, the real estate closings and some of those transactions, at this point they still require in-person exchange of, not in person, but they still require handling of paper and things that need to get sent to locations. And there's still some central processing that has to happen here for those.
So I know we've covered a lot of different areas of law, but is there anything else that you think is sort of coming, that you can see coming down the track at us? Like, is there going to be any changes in law? Is there going to be changes in how, we virtually notarize? I mean, is there anything that you think is going to be different?
Well, North Carolina's recognized electronic signatures. There's Electronic Signature Act, and has been set up to do e-notaries for quite some time. Like if you buy a car now, that they'll have you can do the whole process on a tablet. And the mortgage industry hasn't really adapted to that yet. There's been very few lenders that choose to use the electronic signing, I think, because they're just kind of sticking with what's worked in the past, and don't want to go on hiccups with such a large amount of money in a lot of cases. But I think we'll see the e-signature and e-notary process really kind of pick up some steam, and I think a lot of lenders will like that, and once they get used to it and become comfortable with it, because of the file management is easier, and it's a lot easier to keep up with a PDF than original wet signature documents. And so I think that you'll see a lot more e-notaries and e-closings, which just means you don't have to sign with a pen. You just kind of adopt a signature and approve it that way. And all you have to do that is just a regular notary can do that, but there's kind of like a notary. You have to take a notary class to get approved as an e-notary on top of just your regular notary certification. So I think that's one of the things that'll change in light of this, is that I think that you'll see a lot of people, or you'll see a lot of lenders and a lot of transactions happen electronically as a result of this. Well, I appreciate you listening, and this is a project I'm looking forward to doing more in the future, and hopefully we'll have some good guests. And in the meantime, if you have any questions for me, please feel free to contact me, or our contact information is available on the website. That's www.humphriesfirm.law, and look forward to hearing from people, and thank you for listening.